taller than I am. But I think I speak a little bit more quickly than he does, so I have to remind myself to slow down and not talk at my normal classroom pace. So good morning, Dean Bosworth, Dr. Haas and Toman, Mr. Wharton. Good morning, current alums. Good morning, future alums, students, family members, and parents, and as well my distinguished colleagues. So, as Dean Bosworth said, some of you might have been expecting to arrive here today to be listening to Paulo Bilyk, who is a Fletcher alum and a distinguished businessman from the class of 1992. Unfortunately, Mr. Bilyk couldn't join us today, so Dean Bosworth asked me if I could say a few words, not wearing my Fletcher faculty hat, but wearing my Fletcher alum hat. Now, to be honest, I'm not sure if Dean Bosworth asked me because it is high esteem for me as an alum and a speaker, or simply because I'm the only Fletcher alum on the faculty whose last name begins with A, that's a curse, and who also answered my phone on a Friday afternoon. The other Fletcher alum on the faculty who also are here, but they have names who don't begin with an A. No, but all kidding aside, whatever the motivation for him asking me, I'm really honored to be speaking here today. Not only because this class has a very special place in my heart, I feel as if I've gotten to know many of you quite well, but also because, as Dean Bosworth mentioned, it's my own 15-year reunion, and I'm not telling you how old I was when I graduated. All right, so, as the CIO of an investment firm and also the president of several different public service organizations, I think that Mr. Bilyk would have come and probably given some extremely insightful and useful advice about the private sector, about banking, about corporate social responsibility, and the multitude of changes that this sector has undergone over the course of the past 20 years, in addition to the changes that his own country, Brazil, has really witnessed. Let me tell you that unfortunately I can give you no insights on any of these issues. I have never been to Brazil, which is actually quite shocking when you think of the fact that I'm a development economist and work a lot on information technology, of which Brazil is really at the forefront. I've also never worked for the private sector, which might not be so shocking given the tone of what I'm talking about today. But my path has been a little bit different, and as Dean Bosworth mentioned, when I graduated from Fletcher, I went to work overseas for an NGO in West and Central Africa before returning here to get my PhD in economics. And now I've come back full circle to Fletcher, not as a student or as an alum, but as a faculty member, and I'm very proud to be a part of this faculty. So on the surface then, it seems as if Mr. Bilyk and I have quite different paths, despite the fact that we only graduated from Fletcher 5 years apart. But beneath the surface, I would really argue that he and I probably share something in common, even though we've never met. Our passion for our work, our motivation, and our shared sense of community, which I would argue really was born and came out of our experience at Fletcher, and especially the people that we met here. So what do I really mean by that? Well, I'd like to ask the students who are sitting here in the audience today just to take a minute. So if you've been sitting in my classes, you know I assign you kind of group work. So take a minute and look at the people sitting next to you. Look to your right, look to your left, look at the person behind you, look at the person in front of you, say hi. If you don't know the person, introduce yourselves. All right, good. So if I was boring you up until now, hopefully that got you a little bit excited. So what you should see sitting around you are your classmates, your colleagues, and your friends, all of who came to Fletcher from very different countries, very different backgrounds, and with very diverse perspectives. You're probably sitting next to someone who could be a military officer, a former Peace Corps volunteer, a government official, or an engineer. And over the course of the past few years, you've really gotten to know each other quite well, despite and because of your different backgrounds. You've laughed together, you've danced together, I'm assuming you've drank together, but I don't want to know anything about that. You've suffered through some very interesting and tedious lectures, although none of my lectures were tedious. And I know that you kind of sat through and worked through countless group assignments, which during certain points in time you probably really wanted to pull out your hair, and you were probably maybe cursing the professor who assigned them to you. But again, that wasn't being referring to me. But I would argue that because of those experiences with students from very diverse backgrounds, you probably learned more and better, even if it took you a little bit longer. And I would also bet that during your time here, you've learned more than what was actually taught in the classroom. Many of you probably learned about yourself, who you are, what you believe, what you want to be, and what you want your place in the world to be. And so if that's the case, if you found that over the course of the past 2 years, then in that sense, my time at Fletcher, even though it was 15 years ago, really isn't so different from yours. Sure, I was younger then, I didn't have as many wrinkles or gray hair, but we still kind of sat in Hall of Flags and hung out. We still went down to Davis Square on Thursday night and got a beer. And Dean Sheehan was still making the same corny jokes during the Thank you, Dean Sheehan. We really appreciate that. And also, like you, I had classmates from around the world who challenged me, encouraged me, supported me, infuriated me, and inspired me, both during and after my time here at Fletcher. I had two people in particular who really changed my life. One of them, a classmate, Dave O'Brien, really opened my eyes to the problem of poverty in the developing world, the injustice of it, and got me angry enough to do something about it. The second, my friend Kristen Kent and her husband Lawrence, actually allowed me to ensure that I had the chance to move that passion into action by helping me to get my first job and succeed at it when I worked for Catholic Relief Services. And so when I first went to work for CRS in West Africa, there were numerous challenges at the time. Unfortunately, the wars in Liberia and Sierra Leone were at their height. On a much more banal note, it was very difficult to get around the region because there was only one airline, and it often took us days to get from Ghana to Sierra Leone. And communicating with your friends, your family members, and your colleagues was difficult, if not impossible. We didn't have that fun thing called cell phones that we have nowadays. Luckily, today, many of those challenges have been resolved. The wars in Liberia and Sierra Leone have ended, and they've moved to a peaceful transition to democracy. And mobile phones are now allowing us to communicate with friends and family members in ways that we've never really imagined. Unfortunately, though, there's going to be kind of new challenges, but at the same time, new opportunities for us, from the financial crisis to climate change, from the war in Eastern Congo to technological innovation. And so what I want to say is really this. Tomorrow, you're all going to be leaving here with pretty much the same piece of paper, the same diploma, but you're going to be facing those challenges and opportunities and making your own contribution to the world in very different ways. And your paths are going to be as diverse, as interesting as the ways that you arrived here. The military and the government, the UN, NGOs, banking, consulting firms, and startups. Some of you are going to stay here, some of you are going to return home, and yet others are going to go to different corners of the earth. So to deal with those challenges that you're going to be facing in your new jobs and your new lives, you're really going to need to call upon what you've learned here. You have the skills. I know I trained some of you, and I trust all of my colleagues that have trained the rest of you. But at the same time, there's a Ghanaian proverb that says, wisdom is like a baobab tree. No one individual can embrace it. This means that you can't or shouldn't have to face these obstacles and challenges alone. You'll need to count upon your family and friends for sure, but you should call upon your classmates here and the broader Fletcher community of alumni that you have at your disposal to help you learn how to deal with these obstacles and to really flourish and succeed. But with access to that network also comes a responsibility, and that responsibility is to pay it forward. And what I mean by that is that some of you already have a job. You do, congratulations. Some of you are still looking for a job. Don't worry, you'll get one. And some of you haven't even thought about it because all you want to do is finish your thesis, get your piece of paper tomorrow, and then think about it. But regardless of where you are in the process, almost all of you have or will rely upon the Fletcher community, this Fletcher network, in some way to get there. You can and you definitely should do this. This is extremely important. But in 3, 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now, don't forget where your first job came from and who helped you to get it. Because when the next generation of Fletcher students starts writing you emails, asking for some advice, or they want to meet with you for 10 or 15 minutes just to understand how that business works, your time and your knowledge are going to be the most valuable asset that you can offer. So congratulations to the class of 2012. Welcome to an illustrious group of alums. And thank you so much for this opportunity.
Just imagine what you could have done with 48 hours.